Maya, what are you doing on my floor?
The same thing I've always done, Marcus, surviving.
Does she have a daddy?
Not yet, sweetheart.
Her name is Nadia. It means hope.
Then she already has the perfect father.
The floor she scrubbed the day Marcus Bennett came home early from work. He wasn't expecting his life to change. He was tired. The kind of tired that settles into your bones after 12 straight hours managing inventory at a logistics company, raising a 7-year-old daughter alone, and pretending to the world that everything was fine. His dress shoes clicked against the marble entryway of the house he'd bought 3 years ago, the house he'd been so proud of, the house that sometimes felt too big and too quiet all at once. He pushed open the front door and stopped breathing. There, on the floor of his kitchen, was a woman in a pale blue dress, her swollen belly pressed gently against her knees, her dark hair falling loose around her face, scrubbing his floors with a rag and a bucket of soapy water like she had something to prove to the universe. Maya? Maya Kapoor didn't look up right away. She finished the section of tile she was working on, slow, careful strokes, then sat back against the kitchen island and finally met his eyes. "Hey, Marcus." Her voice was steady, her eyes were not. He crossed the room in 4 strides, crouching down in front of her, his heart hammering somewhere in his chest. "What are you doing on my floor? He gestured helplessly at her stomach. "I needed the money. Mrs. Patterson usually does your cleaning, but she twisted her ankle and she called me because she knows I used to clean houses in college and—" "Maya!" His voice came out softer than he intended. "Stop explaining, just— Are you okay?" She looked at him for a long moment. Those same dark eyes he remembered from childhood, from the summers they spent at their grandmother's neighboring houses in Atlanta, catching fireflies and eating mango on the porch steps. "I've been better," she admitted quietly. Marcus helped her up from the floor with a gentleness that surprised them both. He guided her to the living room couch, disappeared into the kitchen, and came back with a glass of water and whatever food he could quickly assemble, leftover pasta, bread, a banana. He set it on the coffee table in front of her without ceremony. "Eat. Marcus, eat first, then we talk." She ate. He watched her, trying to piece together the last 2 years. He'd heard through distant family connections that Maya had moved to Chicago for a corporate job, that she'd gotten engaged, that things had gone wrong somehow, but details were vague and he hadn't wanted to pry. Looking at her now, 8 months pregnant, scrubbing floors for cash, the details seemed less important than the reality sitting right in front of him. When she finished, she folded her hands carefully over her stomach. "His name was Derek," she said without being asked. "We were together for 2 years. When I got pregnant, he said he wasn't ready. He said—" She paused, pressed her lips together. "He said I had trapped him." Marcus said nothing. The muscle in his jaw tightened. "I lost my job 3 months later, downsizing. I used my savings to move back here, closer to my mom, but she had her surgery and she's still recovering, and I can't stay with her because her apartment is too small and the stairs are—" Her voice finally cracked, just slightly. "I've just been trying to figure it out. Where are you living?" A beat of silence. A weekly rental place off Riverside Drive. He knew exactly what that meant. He'd driven past those buildings. They weren't places for a woman alone, 8 months pregnant in the middle of winter. How long? 6 weeks. Walked to the window, stood there for a moment with his back to her, looking out at the bare front yard where his daughter Zoe had a swing set that was still waiting for spring. He turned around. "You're moving in here." "Marcus, absolutely not." "Maya, I am not a charity case." Her voice had real fire in it now, the kind he remembered from when they were 12 and she'd stood up to every bully on the block. "I am handling my situation. You were scrubbing floors at 8 months pregnant. I was working, in my house, on your knees." He crossed his arms. "Look, I have a guest room that nobody uses. I have a kitchen full of food. I have a 7-year-old who goes to bed at 8:30 and leaves me with nothing to do but watch sports I don't care about." He exhaled. "Let me help you, Maya. You would do it for me." She opened her mouth, closed it, because she would, and they both knew it. Zoe Bennett came home from school that afternoon to find a woman on the living room couch reading a book with her shoes off and a pillow propped under her feet. She stopped in the doorway, stared. "Daddy," she called out slowly, "there's a pregnant lady on our couch." Marcus appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "That's Maya. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Zoe approached with the careful, scientific curiosity of a child who had decided she was going to be a doctor when she grew up. She stopped directly in front of Maya and pointed at her stomach. "Is there a baby in there?" "There is," Maya confirmed seriously. "What kind?" "A girl kind." Zoe considered this. "Does she have a name yet?" "I'm still deciding." Zoe nodded, as though this was a reasonable and responsible position to take. "I'll help," she announced. "I'm good at names. I named both my goldfish and my stuffed elephant." She paused. "The elephant is named Gerald. He's very dignified." Maya laughed, a real laugh. The first one in what felt like months. It lit her whole face. Marcus stood in the kitchen doorway watching it happen, and felt something shift quietly inside his chest. The days settled into a rhythm. Marcus went to work. Zoe went to school. Maya, who refused to simply sit and rest, made herself useful in every way that didn't involve lifting or crouching. She reorganized the kitchen, helped Zoe with homework, called in a grocery order online that somehow included every single thing the refrigerator had been missing. In the evenings, the three of them ate dinner together. It surprised Marcus how natural it felt, how the table that had always seemed slightly too large for just him and Zoe suddenly felt exactly the right size. He learned things about Maya he hadn't known, that she was still doing freelance marketing work from her laptop, building back her savings one small contract at a time, that she read to her baby every night before sleeping, soft, quiet words in both English and Hindi, that she cried sometimes, in the guest room, when she thought no one could hear. He didn't mention the crying, but he started making sure there was always chamomile tea in the cabinet. One night, about 2 weeks in, he found her standing at the kitchen window at midnight, just standing there in the dark, one hand on her stomach, looking out at nothing. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "She's doing gymnastics again." Maya glanced sideways at him. "Sorry if I woke you." "You didn't." He moved to stand beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. "I keep thinking about what kind of mother I'm going to be," Maya said softly. "Whether I'm going to be enough. Whether she's going to grow up feeling—" She stopped. "I don't know, like she was a mistake." "She won't." His voice was certain. "You can't know that. I know you." He turned slightly toward her. "I've known you since we were 8 years old, and you were defending stray cats in the neighborhood and writing letters to the city council about the broken swing in the park. You have more love in you than most people use in a lifetime." He paused. "That little girl is going to know exactly how wanted she is." Maya looked at him for a long moment. "You've gotten very wise," she said finally. "Single parenthood does that." A quiet half smile. "Or destroys you, one of the two." She went into labor on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks later. It was Marcus who drove her to the hospital, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally glancing at her as she breathed through contractions with focused, terrifying calm. It was Marcus who sat in the waiting room for 4 hours, calling her mother, calling his own mother, keeping Zoe updated by text with carefully age-appropriate updates. "Everything is going great. Maya is very brave." "Is the baby here yet?" Zoe texted back. "What about the name?" When the nurse finally came out and told him he could go in, he found Maya propped up against the hospital pillows, tired down to her soul, with a tiny, red-faced, perfectly furious baby lying against her chest. She looked up when he walked in. "Marcus," she said. Her voice was wrecked and wondering. "Look." He looked. Something happened to him then that he had no name for, a feeling that was too large and too quiet at the same time. He pulled up the chair beside her bed and sat down, and neither of them said anything for a long time. "Nadia," Maya said finally, softly. "I think her name is Nadia." "Nadia," he repeated. He said it like it was already true. He told her how he felt 3 months later, not with a grand gesture, not with the words he'd practiced and then abandoned a dozen times, Just one evening when Nadia was asleep and Zoe was asleep and the house was finally quiet, and Maya was sitting across the kitchen table from him with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. He said, "I think I've been in love with you since we were catching fireflies." She looked at him. The kitchen light was warm. Outside, the first thin snow of the year was falling. "I know," she said simply. "I think I have too." The floors in Marcus Bennett's house were always clean. But the best thing that ever happened to him walked through his door not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as someone who had always, in some quiet and unspoken way, belonged there. And some stories don't begin with grand entrances. Some begin with a woman on her knees, a bucket of soapy water, and a man who finally understood that love isn't just what you feel, it's what you do. Copyright Golden Heart Stories.